Welcome to the very first session in the Guide to Helping Your Child Navigate the GCSE Journey. My name's Liv, I'm an SEN teacher of about 10 years and I'm going to be Level Up Tuition's SEN expert, which is really exciting. This guide is aimed at parents or carers, friends, family members of students who are going through their GCSEs at the moment, but specifically at the family members and relatives of students with SEND, which is special educational needs and disabilities. Hopefully you're going to have a lot of key takeaways from the next couple of sessions. We'll go through the agenda at the start of every lesson, so hopefully you'll be able to learn some really key things about various areas of the GCSE journey and how you can support your child or a young person in navigating the journey and helping them, feel as confident as possible, reducing their anxiety, and also making sure that their revision is, in terms of their special educational needs, is as tailored and suitable for their specific needs as possible. Just a sort of preamble is I am going to be trying to encompass everybody into the next couple of sessions. Obviously, every child is unique and their needs are unique, whether they're autistic, whether they have ADHD, whether they've got trauma, whether they've got anxiety or dyslexia. But hopefully what I'm going to give you is some sort of generalized support in terms of how you might be able to then adapt it to your specific child. If you've ever got any questions, you can always post in the Facebook group and I will try and get back to you as quickly as I can with more tailored support for exactly what you're looking for. So today what we're going to look at is exactly what the GCSEs actually are. So in order to support our child or a young person, we need to know exactly kind of what they're going through and what it means for them. So we're going to look at what GCSEs are, the new grading system, the different types of assessment, the access arrangements, which is really important to make sure we understand what they are and who is eligible, requesting support, and the different exam boards and specifications that children might come into contact with throughout their GCSEs. So firstly, what are GCSEs? They are the General Certificates of Secondary Education. Prior to that, they were called O-levels, but they're now called GCSEs. And they are the examinations that are taken between year 10 and year 11 of school. And this is in England. Some of our friends from overseas or from various areas of the United Kingdom, like Wales and Scotland, you might have slightly different sort of borders in terms of where students start taking their exams, but most students will start to choose their subjects, which we'll come on to in a short while, in year 9, and then they will start their exams and coursework preparations in year 10. All of the exams will be finished around June of year 11, and then they will get their results in August. There are mandatory exams, and they will provide the basis for the entrances to colleges or sixth forms, or if your child is looking to go on to do an apprenticeship at post-16, they will also ask for certain grades in certain subjects for a pass level, which is what we'll come on to next. There are some mandatory subjects that all students have to take at GCSE, which is English language, mathematics, and for maths you'll be split into either the higher tier or the foundation tier, and then science, which is obviously biology, chemistry, and physics. And for more of the foundation learners, they will be doing something typically called combined science, which is where all of the sciences are combined into different papers, but you'll have aspects of all three in all of the exams. Or if you're going to do separate sciences or triple sciences, sometimes double science, but I'm not sure that that's overly common anymore. You will do triple science, which is where you'll have a paper specifically for biology, for chemistry, and then for physics. So those are the mandatory subjects. You then also have the optional subjects, so such as the humanities, geography, history, RE, technical subjects, PE, computer science, design technology, modern foreign languages, often called MFL, and this varies based on which school you go to in terms of the MFL that they offer, but usually it is Spanish, German, and French. And then I think more schools now are offering Russian, Latin, and more of the Asian languages in terms of Urdu, Punjabi as well. Social sciences are a relatively new addition to the curriculum. So you've got things like psychology, health and social care, and I think childcare studies as well. Then you've got the arts, art, textiles, food tech, music, drama, dance, media, everything, all to do with expressions. And there's obviously many, many more. There are hundreds of subjects to choose from, and it really depends on which school you go to, but also the exam boards in which you choose to take and what your school supports, because you may also be able to do some of these subjects outside of school directly with the exam board itself. Typically, schools will offer students a choice of around 20 subjects, and some are mandatory insofar as you then get a choice. So some schools are saying you have to do a humanities, but then you have a choice of geography, history, or RE. Some are saying you have to do an MFL, with the exception of certain students who may struggle with spoken languages or have like quite severe dyslexia. And then they will say, which language that you've been studying since year 7, etc. So those are the options, and your child will have an option of choosing up to a certain number, but this will be guided by your class teacher, school Senko, and the heads of year. The grading system, so this has recently changed. The column on the right is what I was used to, and I think what most people were used to. So working from A star down to a U, and the it's very sort of obvious in terms of how well you have done based on the letter that you get. But this has now, since 2017, changed to a numeric system of 9 down to 1. So 9, 8, and 7 sort of corresponds to grade A star and A. 6, 5, 4 is the equivalent to a B or a C. 3, 2, 1 is a D to a G, and then the U, which means ungraded, has remained the same. Now, the pass rate used to be a C, and it is now a number 4. So as long as your child gets a 4, that means that they have passed that subject, and that is typically what colleges and apprenticeships will ask for when they ask for a pass. Typically in maths and English, you're looking for a grade 4. That's the magic number. The different types of assessment, this is really important to understand. So the exams are not just going to be an exam paper that you take at the end of the year. Many of them are, but there's lots of different options, and sort of considering what your child's specific needs are, what they do well in, what they may struggle with, can also dictate the types of subjects that they then choose. So there's going to be a lot of examination papers. They could be multiple choice, they could be essay-based questions as well, or they could be short form answer. You've got coursework, which I've clearly misspelled here. Coursework is what I mean. By coursework, that might be things to do with the art. So say they're like collage or portfolio, so creating a big portfolio of your work. Coursework may also be in the sort of English subjects like media, like doing a screenplay, sort of writing a couple of essays, but that over a span of a couple of weeks, that is then put into a portfolio. Practical assessments, things like DT, making something out of woodwork, or let's say PE, where you're asked typically to run a lesson or plan a lesson, that is then taken into actually delivering that on the sports field. And then presentations or spoken examinations, really common in English and also the modern foreign languages. You'll be asked to do a speaking exam, which some students really struggle with, especially the students with anxiety, as sort of public speaking can be quite a difficult topic. And so it's really important to sort of understand when you're choosing GCSEs, what is the assessment look like, and will it play into the strengths of your child, or will it be something that actually is going to be quite a struggle and quite anxiety inducing? Access arrangements. So I'm sure that if you've got a child who's got special educational needs, you've already sort of looked into this, and sort of seen what help is available for them in class, but also what can help in terms of the examination. So anybody with SEND, diagnosed or not, you do not have to have an EHCP, an education healthcare plan, to have access arrangements made, is eligible for access arrangements within examinations. Some of the most common needs that students have, who then also go on to get access arrangements, are slow reading ability, poor attention or concentration skills. So a lot of students with ADHD will fall into that category. Illegible handwriting. I've had a few students who have got ADHD, but also may have dyslexia, or have a brain condition where it really affects their sort of fine motor skills, and therefore their handwriting is quite difficult to read. Poor memory skills, speech and language difficulties. As I said there, with the oral exams, speech and language difficulties may come into this. Visual impairment, if you have a child who is blind or partially blind, typically a slower rate of working, or any students with anxiety. This is just a sort of a quick overview of some of the most common things that I've come across for students who've then had access arrangements made for them. So if you have a child who falls into any of these sort of categories, or you see the behaviours that sort of resonate with you and your child, then start to think about the access arrangements that could be made. The access arrangements that could be there are things like extra time. That is probably the most common one. So if you have a child who needs a little bit more time to process things, who needs a little bit more time to read questions and make sure that they're going over their work and have fully understood what is being asked of them, then typically you'll be given a percentage of extra time. Separate and sensory friendly rooms, really important for students who are autistic, often being in a very quiet space, even though it sounds a bit contradictory, as a lot of our autistic students like the quiet, but when it is too quiet, the small little, the sound of pencils on paper or the sound of people tapping their feet, it can be really, really sensory overload. And so going into a sensory friendly room, also something to do with the light. Typically, exam halls are very, very bright and they use a lot of natural light, which can be quite frustrating for autistic students. So finding a separate sensory friendly room is great. A prompter or a reader or a scribe, really helpful for students who struggle with reading or understanding the written word, and a scribe for people who may struggle with handwriting. Assistive technology, so that could be something like text-to-speech. Rest breaks. Some of the exams can be extremely long, like 3 hours. And so if you need rest breaks or brain breaks, that can also be arranged, especially again for students with ADHD or with autism. Modified question papers. And that means sort of like, either the questions have been worded ever so slightly differently, or they are printed in large print or braille for our students who've got visual impairment. For coloured overlays or paper, that's really helpful for dyslexic students, certainly yellow paper. It really helps them be able to read the print in a much more sort of dyslexic friendly way. And then flexible seating arrangements, so either being nearer the front or being nearer the back, whichever the student prefers. And this sort of ties into the sensory friendly room as well. Special considerations. So this is ever so slightly different from access arrangements, but special considerations are adjustments made to an exam paper after they've already taken it. So this may reflect either a temporary injury or an illness or something else that may have affected them at the time of this assessment. So, for me, actually, when I was taking my exams, my grandfather passed away very suddenly during my examinations. And this was sort of taken into account because obviously my mental state wasn't quite there. And in order to sort of inform somebody of this special consideration, speak to your school's exam officer and they will take everything from there. How to get access arrangements. The easiest way is to speak to the school's SENCO, so the Special Educational Needs Coordinator, and also to speak to the school's exam officer. The school need to apply for the access arrangements, and the sooner that this can be done, the better. There are a lot of students out there at the moment with SEND who will be needing access arrangements, and this needs to be made sure that it is in place to ensure that they are fully supported throughout their exam. These are just a couple of the exam boards. So we've got AQA, Edexcel, Cambridge, OCR, the WJEC, which is for Wales. And obviously we've got different exam boards for Northern Ireland, Scotland and mainland Ireland as well. They're all roughly the same. It's ever so slightly different in terms of the offers that they have in terms of their examination style. So more AQA is more multiple choice exam papers, less coursework focus, less practical exam focus. Whereas Edexcel, they offer a lot more in terms of subjects. So they offer a lot more in terms of the MFL, and you can do a lot more with them in terms of sort of directly applying if you wanted to do a subject specifically that they offer. OCR is typically for people looking to do like coursework focus exams, lots of multiple choice exams, lots of practical exams. OCR is typically the best one for that. So always ask your school when you're going through your choices what the exam board is. They do have different reputations as well as one being harder than the other, but overall they sort of even out. It's just based on what they offer your specific child in terms of where their strengths lie. So the key takeaways of here is to be aware of the subjects that your child has chosen and what the assessments are. As I said, if you've got a child who really does not like public speaking, MFL may not be the best one, or a student who doesn't like doing a lot of presentations. It's just being aware of what is going to be needed to be assessed. Speak to your child's school early to make sure that they are getting the support. This will have probably already been raised with you across the course of their time at school, if they're going to have access arrangements or special considerations, and they might have a TA, a teaching assistant already in place who is going to be helping them throughout their GCSE journey. And just to be aware of all the access adjustments that are available to make sure that your child is effectively supported. So hopefully that's a really good introduction to the GCSEs, what they are, what they're offered, how they're graded. And now we can also look on to actually know how to support your child in creating revision plans.